They were only children.
I was 13.
I was 16.
I was 12 years old.
Sent by judges to a reform school run by the state of Florida to learn from their misdeeds.
I went to Okeechobee for stealing a $3 shirt.
We started stealing cars.
Well, I don't know if running away from home is a crime or not, but I ran away from home.
Instead,
the pain is insane level pain.
they were beaten,
You don't know when they're going to stop.
brutalized,
And if you let them know they hurt you, they'll hurt you again.
and in some cases, didn't make it out alive.
We excavated 55 burials.
For generations, our society has grappled with how to treat children who committed crimes.
I had a bad attitude back then, real bad attitude.
And in recent years, lawmakers and judges have moved toward the understanding that rehabilitation is better than retribution.
Our children are our #1 asset.
After all, our Constitution protects us from cruel and unusual punishment, no matter what we did or how old we are.
People aren't supposed to be treated that way.
But what happened in two state-run reform schools in Marianna and Okeechobee was so cruel and so unusual.
They hit you to the point where it drew blood.
Yeah. They didn't care where they hit you at either.
Many said they weren't even believed when they tried to speak out about the horrors they endured.
There's two types of people. There's the type that don't believe you, and there's the type that think you deserve it.
And when some finally did believe the stories, it took years for the state to apologize.
I'm 73 years old, and there's not much in life left for me.
And to try to right the wrongs.
We were locked up for doing something wrong. But all they have to do is say, I'm sorry. When I said I was sorry, it didn't matter.
That happened at the Florida School for Boys.
It destroys you, and once it's with you, it's hard to get it away from you.
Right now, the Florida Attorney General's office is processing hundreds of claims filed by men who are senior citizens to be compensated for atrocities they endured as children. The creation of a victim compensation fund, a watershed moment for these men who spent years fighting for an apology from the very government that harmed them. A warning, you're about to hear graphic descriptions of violence inflicted on children.
Distant memories.
That's me, and that was my next sister. She's 13 months older than I am.
Of a childhood.
When was it taken? Yeah. I think I'm probably about 71 years ago.
That got complicated.
We were poor, and my father left when I was about 9 years old. And then I had a stepfather came along, ex-military, and we didn't get along too good.
James Anderson tells me by his early teens, he developed a taste for beer.
Nothing I'm proud of.
And stealing cars.
To get from point A to point B, I guess.
He was 14 when he was sent to the Florida School for Boys at Okeechobee.
We were very poor, and I chose stealing.
Michael Anderson, no relation.
I would steal shirts, and that's what inevitably got me.
Can't quite remember if he was 15 or 16 when he went.
I went to Okeechobee for stealing a $3 shirt.
I don't think they really knew what was actually going on at them places.
And Willie Brown began the first of his two stays there in 1964. He was 14.
I got out, I was on supervision, probation, I violated, and they sent me back. But I think it was because I got in a fight with a guy. And I had a bad attitude back then, real bad attitude.
So my life just totally changed.
As for James Harcum,
I wanted to go.
He was 15 when he went before a Lee County judge to answer for his theft habit. It was 1967, and in Harcum's telling, he was fed up with his mother's abusive boyfriends.
I didn't want to go back to that house.
Do you
remember what it was like arriving at Okeechobee for the first time?
The grounds were well kept. The buildings looked clean.
After you go to school that half a day, in the afternoon, you're assigned to a job, a detail.
It was self-sufficient. We had our own farm, cattle, pigs, chickens, everything. Raised it all.
I got to be the baker, and everybody liked my rolls. My specialty was rolls and pineapple upside down cake.
When you first get there, they seem polite. They go over the rules, tell you what you should do, what not to do.
Breaking those rules often meant you were, in campus jargon, going down.
Down is when you go to a room, a designated room, where they beat you.
I can remember it like it was yesterday.
It's just like a concrete block room. Probably 12 by 12, something like that maybe. And in there against the wall it's like an army cot. It's metal. And it's got a little rise on it, maybe 3 or 4 inches, like a crossbar going over it.
And I went in, and I could see a strap.
Yeah, it was about that long with a handle on it.
It was a leather thing about 3.5 inches wide, about 1 inch thick, and it looked like it had a single piece of sheet metal down the middle of it.
So we laid in a prone position. You're going to turn your head to the wall, and you're going to hold on to that rail, and you're not going to let go. And you're not going to scream out. And if you do, we're going to start over.
You know, you turn to your right, and you're holding it like this, right?
First thing you hear is a psst. That's that strap breaking wind coming through the air. And I remember that sound. That sound when leather hits you, leather hits the flesh. Sounds like a gun going off.
It was like a shotgun. Pop, pop, like that. And they would run at you.
They just started one slow one at a time, reaching as high as they could and smacking it down.
That first hit is like a mushroom cloud. It's like a mushroom. It's the only thing I was like a nuclear explosion. It was excruciating pain. It went right up into your solar plexus and it just comes right out of your head. It feels like your soul is being beat out of you.
And you're thinking, when is it? Are they going to stop now? Are they going to stop now?
So you're going to get 20 lashes.
I can't understand anybody could survive past 20. I really can't.
I quit counting. I'm going to say 26, 27.
They hit you to the point where it drew blood.
Yeah. They didn't care where they hit you at either. Sometimes that bow hit your head.
So the pain, and then there's pain, and then there's more pain, and then pain on top of that's more pain, and I thought I was going to die.
Your buttocks, your ass cheeks, if I can say that word, turn black as your dress and get real hard like leather.
One huge black bloody bruise. They wouldn't let my mother come and see me until that was healed. And God knows that must have taken at least a month.
And each time they did it, I wasn't allowed to have any communication with my family. They wasn't allowed to come see me. And I just got fed up. And that's the time I made up my mind, I don't care what happened, I'm gonna try to escape.
At the Florida School for Boys, escaping was the worst offense of all.
I just got fed up. Now that's the time I made up my mind, I don't care what happened, I'm gonna try to escape.
It was a rainy night over Okeechobee School for Boys. We figured that'd be a great night to do it.
But I don't care. I'd rather snakes, gators, or what else get me other than to continue to stay here to take these whippings.
You just go, you scale a fence, and you run downtown.
And as I got to the fence, I jumped the fence. Caught the barbed wire, caught my knee, but I kept going.
We just started looking in windows, and it seemed like every other car had the keys in it. So we jumped in and just took off.
I got on the highway, I know we'll get Highway 27. This trooper, he came by. He stopped and he backed up. When he backed up, he noticed that I was an escapee.
And that's when we were finally arrested, probably about 3 days after our escape, stealing 4 vehicles, taking 2 of those across state lines.
He asked me why I escaped. I told him I escaped because they were beating on me. They beat me to death. If they had caught me when I escaped, I wouldn't be talking to you now. It just so happened that the state trooper did catch me. And because he caught me and took me back, he had knowledge that I did escape. If something happened to me, then there was an investigation would have started to find out what happened. I think that's the only thing that saved me from actually being disappeared.
At the Florida School for Boys, escaping was the worst offense of all.
So you go into solitary confinement, you got a sheet and a blanket, pillow, and you got a Bible, and that's all you got. You don't make any sound. You don't sing, you don't talk, you don't hum, you don't do anything. If you do, you'll be going down the beating room. And so yeah, I had about 72 days of silence, not a word.
And after that 72 days, Harcum says he was beaten again.
To understand where things went so wrong at the Florida School for Boys at Okeechobee, it's important to understand how it all started.
Sprawling rural campuses.
Racial tension during that time was very high.
In the Jim Crow South.
If I was caught, see right here, where me and you are sitting here, back in those times, I couldn't be here. If I did, I would probably jumped on, killed, or either get put in jail or whatever.
Racially segregated dorms and dining halls, a working farm.
I played ball on the team. We got to go to a couple of the high schools.
These are the images you'll find in the Florida State Archives of the Florida Schools for Boys at Okeechobee and at its forerunner, the Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys in the panhandle town of Marianna, about 60 miles west of Tallahassee. But one forensic anthropologist wanted to dig beyond what was presented in the student newspapers.
Seeing that there were, family members out there who were searching for their missing brothers and uncles, I just wanted to, see if we could try to help them.
Dr. Erin Kimmerly is a professor at the University of South Florida.
We do this kind of work every day where we're looking for clandestine burials, we're looking for, missing persons and trying to identify unknown remains.
She remembers a 2010 report on the Dozier School from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement that caught her attention.
And they said that there were 31 graves, and that they kind of accounted for them, even though they were unmarked.
So what was your final number that you came up with?
We excavated 55 burials. I think what was perplexing is that here you have this state institution, and children go into state custody, and then they died, and there's not a record of it. So you kind of take all these different lines of evidence. You talk to people who were there, we look at death certificates and archival data and newspapers.
It all goes back to the turn of the 20th century when the state of Florida wanted to start a reform school for boys aged 10 to 16 to serve sentences no longer than 4 years for crimes they committed.
The town of Marianna competed to get this institution built there in the late 1800s. And so I'm like, why would it be so important to get a reform school in your town?
The Florida School for Boys opened in 1900.
To me, I thought it must have been profitable.
Funded by the state, the school also got $50 per child from the county that sentenced them there. But as Kimberly discovered, leadership at the school wanted more. Having so few inmates makes the crop come in slow. I fear we will not finish gathering the corn by January, wrote the school's superintendent to the Board of Managers in 1906. Historical records show school leaders successfully lobbied state lawmakers for changes. Sentences became longer, and the reasons behind them more broad. Kimberly uncovered records of kids as young as age 6 sentenced indefinitely for things like delinquency. The $50 fee was also eliminated, removing a financial barrier for the county courts. Historical records reveal the state investigated the reform school between 1903 and 1913. That's how lawmakers found out about its convict leasing program, which by 1913 had generated $3 million in revenue, with kids as young as age 10 set to labor with adult convicts in cotton fields and phosphate mines.
But we saw a lot of evidence of chronic infection. Many of them succumbed to illness and malnutrition right away.
The state knew about that too. The 1913 investigation documented the poor health and safety conditions at the reform school. As a result, the superintendent resigned, and the legislature provided more funding. It was used for improvements on the white side of campus. And the labor continued. Children were tending crops, running a brick-making machine, and operating a printing press. As Kimberly learned, the end of a sentence didn't necessarily mean the work would end.
If your parents couldn't afford to, send you a bus ticket home, you would get hired out for labor, let's say a local farm or someplace, and basically have to work for your room and board. Some of our youngest, the 5 and 6 and 7, 8-year-olds, the same thing. They'd actually been paroled out as houseboys.
A 5-year-old houseboy?
That's correct, yeah. And they're African American, sent out as houseboys, died, we don't know why, and just brought back to the school. Others ran away, died of exposure, died of blunt injury to the forehead. We don't know what caused that injury. One died of a gunshot wound. The last recorded death where they were buried at the school was 1952. So that's right before Okeechobee opens.
My first name is Noel, my last name is Stephen, and I'm blessed to be the sheriff of Okeechobee County. Very rural county that's very tight-knit. Everybody knows each other. We are a community that cares, and if we see something, we say something.
So what was your reaction to learning that these things were happening in your backyard?
Well, that was happening in Marianna, and I never heard anything necessarily happening here in Okeechobee.
The Florida School for Boys at Okeechobee opened in 1959.
It was really a duplicate or a clone of Dozier. The people who ran Dozier went there and set it up. They had all the same policies, programs, protocols.
It was always a part of our community. It was a big employer. As the Marianna case started being investigated and information started coming out and people started coming forward and telling the stories, is when it really started hearing about things that allegedly had happened here in Okeechobee. Sadly or luckily, depending on how you look at it, we did not find any bodies that were buried on that property.
Do you think remains could still be out there?
In 2015, sheriff's deputies and cadaver dogs scoured the campus of the Florida School for Boys at Okeechobee.
Sadly or luckily, depending on how you look at it, we did not find any bodies that were buried on that property.
Do you think remains could still be out there?
I don't think that, based on the investigator was very confident that he had everybody identified. That was about a 5 to 6 month investigation, but we could not find any missing boys from Okeechobee. Everybody that we could pretty much find on that ledger we had obituaries for, or we had talked to them ourselves.
How did it happen, and in a way that ended in death 55 times over, perhaps and then some?
Right.
But not once in Okeechobee.
Right. Well, that's a good question. And I think what happens in the 50s and 60s is you do see a shift in burial practices and kind of professionalization with undertakers. So it's not that there weren't necessarily deaths occurring, but they weren't buried there.
Attempts were made over the decades to make both reform schools safer. In a 1983 class action lawsuit against the Dozier School, former students alleged children were being hogtied, shackled, and often held in solitary confinement. The case resulted in a consent decree in 1987. The decree put safety and educational standards into place at Dozier and Okeechobee. It also established stricter criteria to be sentenced there, and it gave kids at the schools better access to legal assistance. A judge withdrew Dozier from the decree in 1995, ruling that the school had complied with the decree's standards. Same for Okeechobee, then known as the Eckerd Youth Development Center, the following year.
It went through several years of private entities running it. We in law enforcement and those private entities struggled due to wrongly classed inmates that was in their facility that were creating problems. So we were constantly having calls of service to the school.
The Dozier School closed in 2011, just months after leadership had announced a merger with the nearby Maximum Risk Youth Detention Center. The school says it shut down due to financial reasons. Later that year, the U.S. Department of Justice released an investigative report on Dozier. It said staff continued to use solitary confinement and, quote, force as a first resort, sometimes unprovoked, as recently as 2010. Florida's oversight system failed to detect and sufficiently address the problems we found at Dozier, the report said. The Okeechobee campus closed December 31st, 2020. The Florida Department of Juvenile Justice said it was not renewing its contract for that campus with the private company that was running the school. The state did not publicly share its reasoning.
For decades, the horrors inside the Dozier and Okeechobee schools remained locked away from public view, while the survivors carried the burden of what they endured.
It's a dark, dingy dungeon.
I was scared to death.
They might come get you in the middle of the night.
How did they create that environment of fear?
With that White House.
With that White House in there.
That White House putting fear in you.
They call themselves the White House Boys.
You walk in that place and it stunk. It was damp. They'd turn a big old attic fan that was mounted in the wall. They turned it on, made all kind of racket, because you couldn't hardly breathe when you go in there. And they had one light bulb hanging in the ceiling. And it's, when you're a young kid, it scares the hell out of you. And then they two grown men taking you in there and beat the crap out of you.
Strangers as children.
And some of you just met today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
I was in Dozier, I was 15. I was in there 11 months from 1961 to 1962. I was in there for breaking and entering.
I was 12 years old when I was sent to the Dozier School. My brother and I was sent there for being incorrigible. We skipped school and smoked cigarettes.
I was in there 64, 65.
And how old were you?
I was 15 years old. I don't know if running away from home is a crime or not, but I ran away from home.
I'm 77 years old. And when I went to Dozier, I was 13. They say I broke into the Ford place in a little town, Trenton, Florida, stole a car and wrecked it.
They said you did.
Yes.
Did you?
No. I couldn't even drive.
Brothers in their 70s.
We all went through the same thing. Probably passed by each other, didn't even know each other, wasn't even allowed to speak to one another.
In the 2000s, survivors started sharing stories online about their experiences at Dozier.
I was taken down to the White House and being beat with the leather strap 31 licks by a 6'7", 225-pound gentleman.
Going down to the White House for giving a friend of mine some syrup.
I was scarier there than I was when I was in Vietnam. Because in Vietnam, I knew I could come back, but there I didn't know whether I was coming back.
Well, the black boys back in those days were treated really rough.
Worse than the white boys?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, yeah,
Most of them couldn't read and write. Their parents couldn't read and write. You know, they had no money.
Those online accounts are what led the FDLE to investigate and publish that report that got Kimberly's attention. It also got the attention of the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice, which sealed the White House in 2008, enshrining it as a reminder of what happened inside.
We'd seen it on the news. A bunch of guys had seen it on the news, and we all met there for the first time.
Until that meeting, many had struggled to talk about what they went through at the Dozier School.
When you're that young and have that kind of trauma, it's like getting a tattoo.
It takes your self-esteem and crushes it.
Yeah, it messes you up.
It messes you up through your life.
Even with their own families.
I just kept buried it in me. I wouldn't share it with nobody. I wouldn't tell nobody about it. I was ashamed of it. My son didn't know nothing about I had been to Dozier until 2 weeks ago. I lay in my bed sometime and just think about it and break into tears.
But the men found strength in each other. Their voices united behind a shared truth.
Good morning.
And in 2017, lawmakers and the governor formally apologized to the survivors of the Dozier and Okeechobee schools.
I think the very first apology came from Governor Scott when he apologized to me because I broke down in tears telling him that one of my brothers that was sent to Mariana had taken his life at 23 years old, which is still hard for me to talk about.
We were locked up for doing something wrong. But all they have to do is say, I'm sorry. When I said I was sorry, it didn't matter. I still had to pay the price. They still need to pay the price. They'd done something wrong, and saying I'm sorry is not enough.
Last year, Florida lawmakers unanimously passed a bill to create a $20 million victim compensation fund for survivors of the abuse at the state-run reform schools in Mariana and Okeechobee.
36 yeas, 0 nays, Madam President.
Joe, the bill passes.
A proud day.
Thank you for never giving up.
16 years in the making.
Thank you for telling the story.
For the White House boys.
And the stories of those who are not here and can't speak.
That was a joyful moment, for myself, yeah. And I'm sure everybody that was part of what had happened and taken place there at Mariana and Okeechobee.
In March 2024, Florida lawmakers unanimously allocated $20 million to compensate the survivors of the state-sponsored abuse at the Dozier and Okeechobee schools.
I was crying, he was crying. I know he was crying because I seen him.
I could pay off my credit cards. That'd be nice.
I'm 73 years old, and there's not much in life left for me. So I probably buy some land somewhere, a house, and just live there the rest of my life.
People will see me in a different light or understand me. That's the most important thing. The money, yeah, hey, I'll spend the money, but it's not going to make any big changes in my life.
The compensation followed years of meetings, survivor testimony, and failed legislation.
What kept you so persistent?
I just knowing that what they did was wrong.
That's it.
And we would like justice.
After the cameras stopped rolling on my conversation with the White House boys, they confessed to me that earlier that day, they'd been debating how candid they should be about their feelings toward that $20 million victim compensation bill. Ultimately, as a group, they decided to do what they'd done since they first came together: tell the truth. So $20 million.
Laughing at that.
You're laughing at that.
That's not enough. How many boys are there? How many? Now you
There's
divide
1,000
that.
people.
See, they publicized 20 million like it was some gigantic amount, and it would be if it was a dozen people.
Yes.
Or 100 people, but not 1,000 people. Cost McDonald's $160,000 for a hot cup of coffee.
For one person.
If there's 1,000 people, that's $20,000 a piece. In today's money, what's $20,000 in today's money?
And how much money have we spent in 16 years? Hotels, gas, food.
Sleepless nights.
Sleepless night. You offered me $20,000, $10,000, whatever. I've spent more than that, trying to get justice.
I've had the media ask, were we looking for reparations? I've lived with this 65 years. What's 65 years of a person's life worth?
Excuse me, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Because you mentioned money and what it's worth, and if you had a 6-year-old boy or a 15-year-old boy, and I took him into a room, your boy, and beat him like we were beat, what would you do? Would you kill me?
I might want to.
I mean,
yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm saying this on camera. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that's why I wanted to ask you all, is this justice?
Not really.
No.
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 How do you put a price on trauma? You can't reclaim the innocence of your childhood that was beaten away, or become the person you wish you could have been had years of your youth not been stolen. These are really tough questions, but the lawmaker who filed that victim compensation bill believes there are still ways for the White House boys to seek justice.
It's hard for me to believe that 60 years later, I can still get emotional about it.
They may not have known each other as children,
You see things happen that you try to forget.
or even gone to the same reform school.
I still feel the pain.
But the boys of Okeechobee and Dozier carry similar scars into adulthood.
I didn't think that was in me anymore, but it's still there.
And I've always denied it. In my head, I've always denied, it doesn't affect me, it didn't affect me. And for some reason it does.
I'm nervous all the time. I have anxiety disorder, I'm freaked out.
I arrived there as a very angry person. And when I left there, I was in a rage. And I had to put out that fire, and I started drinking, so I eventually turned to drugs.
I have trust issues. I can't trust anybody because I've seen what they've done. I know what they're capable of doing.
Well, I've been married 4 times, and it's the temper thing, the drinking.
What we put our wives through and everything, and our children through, yeah, man, we should talk about them. They went through a lot as well.
It's something that lives with you, and I know I have anger in me from that. And I know it had to come from that because I wasn't born that way. It had to be something in my life to put that in me.
what they did to these young men was take their futures away.
Florida Representative Michelle Salzman of Escambia introduced the $20 million victim compensation bill.
We wish we could just give them all the time back that they lost and everything in their lives every opportunity that they weren't able to have because of the experiences that they went through.
Yeah, I wanted to ask how you guys arrived at that $20 million figure.
So essentially, it started out as, how do we even do this? How do we calculate damages from one person to another? We have a wrongful incarceration calculation in the state of Florida, and it's I believe $50,000 per year of wrongful incarceration.
According to the Attorney General's office, which administers the fund, more than 1,000 people applied for compensation.
That's not quite how the math is going to work out, though.
That's right. That's correct. That is because we had no real data on how many people were alive, how many people were going to file a claim. But what we did, we pulled data from previous studies, and it gave a figure of 350 or something people. It was the best we could do in a way that was meaningful and that we could actually say how we got there.
In your perfect scenario, what would justice be for these boys?
Well, we attempted to open the statute and create a way to go after the people that abuse the boys.
But they waited this long. By this time, everybody who was responsible is no longer alive.
And the people who beat you, the people who mistreated you?
They're all gone.
They're dead.
They're gone. Yeah, they're gone. Yeah, Tidwell is gone. Yeah.
Tidwell was one of the last ones to die.
Yeah, Tidwell beat me. The one-armed guy, Tidwell.
That's who got me.
Yeah.
He beat hundreds, if not thousands of boys.
In a perfect world, we also would have given them a lot more money. To be honest with you, we recognize that amount was very small.
It would be nice to have an amount that would give us some sort of justice to where we may have a joyful ending of the years that we have left.
Salzman told me she's tried to find ways beyond the money to bring some joy and justice to the men who had been deprived of it for so long.
We really wanted it to be something that could be replicated in other states so that other people can get that same closure and validation that they deserved.
Establishes the Dozier School for Boys and Okeechobee School Victim Compensation Program.
We also got them the ability to get a GED, so the Secretary of Education is going to give each of those victims a diploma, which they never had. Now we can say, look, it was actually codified in statute that this happened. It will forever be a part of Florida's history. Something nobody can erase. You can't put it in a textbook and pull it out. You can't put it in a documentary and don't play it. This is forever going to be entrenched, that we recognize that these people went through something so horrific and they did not deserve that experience.
I don't have no anger in me. I realize that, there's only so many people in politics that can do so much.
The White House is protected as a monument to let everybody know what the hell happened.
But you're looking at 4 peoples here and lots more that made it through. But I look at all of the ones that didn't make it.
That's true. Very true.
I knew boys that ran away that I never seen anymore.
Yeah.
Once they ran away, that was it. You didn't see them anymore. So what happened to them?
There's 183 that are unaccounted for that checked in but never checked out. They didn't dig up that many. There's more bodies up there.
What would justice look like to you for what happened?
Well, obviously that it never happens again.
There's no way of us getting away from what happened to us. All we can do is pray and hope that people seeing what took place for us as children, that it never happens to any children in institutions ever again.
can tell you the evil that is in that, still in those grounds, is palpable.
This bill should never have happened. This was state employees that brutalized children. Yes, it's difficult to talk about, but if I don't talk about it, who will?
The punishment was far worse than the crime.